Welcome to this demonstration of Gimmal's Physical Information Management Solution, or PIM for short. So let's get started. Let's go into a library where I have a mix of both physical and electronic records stored. You can see here I have content types that represent folders, microfiche, expandables, boxes, and even electronic records. Well, PIM provides me the ability to set any content type in SharePoint as representing a physical item, which means you can create content types that model any physical asset you want to track with PIM. I can use any custom metadata to track the information that I would like, and I can designate certain content types as containers. So a folder, for example, can contain other records. A box can contain records or folders, and so on. PIM also adds a nice ribbon interface for all of my common physical information management functions, all of the things that I would want to do with my physical records. So let's start by simply creating a physical item. We select physical record. We give our physical record a name, and we say next. This will create the record in our library, and then it will bring up the properties screen for me to fill in the various metadata properties. So we'll call this Dean 9988. The item ID could be populated with Gimmal's auto numbering capabilities. We can simply enter in one for the moment. We'll put in the item type is a record, and so on. Okay. Again, I could use Gimmal's metadata inheritance rules to auto-populate any of the metadata columns as well. We'll put this in the central file room as its normal home location, and we'll say save. So we've now gone in and we have created a brand new physical record. Once we have a record created, we might want to add that record into a container. And I can do that by simply selecting the record and saying add a container, or I could select a container and say add contents to that container. So let's add our record into a container. I click on the record, I add it to a container, and now I can either search for the container or I can browse and locate an existing container. Either way. Let's go into our physical records library. Let's select a folder here. We'll take Dean's folder. We'll say OK, and that will now add our physical record into Dean's folder for us. Now, once that's happened, we can view the containership a couple of different ways. If I go to Dean's folder and I say, allow me to view the properties on that folder, that's going to show me all of the metadata about Dean's folder, as well as a hyperlink that allows me to view what is in that folder. It's presented in this nice little cascading menu here, and you see that we have our one record sitting in the folder. Let's go back to our library. Now, oftentimes for physical content, it's stored, in an offsite location or in a warehouse somewhere. Users request that information, have it sent to them. But there's also the concept of what we call alternate content. I may, when I request a physical record, we may have someone actually take that physical record, scan it, and associate an electronic image of that record to the physical record. And we call that alternate content. You see here we have a metadata column that indicates whether or not any of our records have alternate content associated. If someone scanned this physical record, I could come in to the ribbon and say add alternate content, browse to where that scanned image is, grab the scanned image, and say upload. This uploads the image and associates it to that physical record. We refresh our screen. Here's LDM 9988, and you see it now has alternate content associated to it, and a user now knows if they just click on the record, they can actually view the alternate content. And there's the scanned image. Now, for other records that may not have alternate content, I may want to request those records. So how do I go about doing that? Well, as I'm working through the day, I may be selecting different records. So here's a box, and let's say, oh, that box is already charged out. Let's take this box, and let's take this folder, and let's take that folder there. And I now want to request these items. Well, I can do that by simply selecting all of the items I want and adding them to my personal area. I can have personal areas already created, or I can create one on the fly. Let's add these to Dean's area. And I can add to my personal area as I work throughout the day, and then when I reach a point in time I'm ready to request the items, I go to my personal area, I select it, I see the items that I have requested, and I say request delivery. That opens up the delivery request screen. We'll assign this to Sue. I'm going to request it today, and I'm going to return those items at the end of let's say the beginning of November, and with a note as to why I want them, and I say submit. This generates a delivery request, which is then sent to the PIM operations SharePoint site. So let's go over there and take a look. Here's our PIM operations site. This is essentially a portal that shows all of the inbound requests, charge-out notifications, and other information for our operations personnel at the warehouse and the central file room, whoever's managing the request process. Here's our information that we just brought in. You notice there are other requests that are in progress. We're actually using a workflow to trigger and manage that request process, right? So I could route it around for approval, for billing, or whatever else I may need. Once items are charged out, or once a request comes in, as the operations manager, I can quickly see if there are blocked items in this request. I can see all of the data. I can see what the users requested. So here I can see the user requested this box and this folder. Neither one is flagged as not eligible for charge out. So now I can select both of those items, go to physical, and say charge those out to the user who requested them. And we're going to put, they said they would send them back on the 1st, so we're going to set the due date to the 1st. And we know that Dean requested it, so it's going to go to Dean's office. And now those items are charged out. We say OK. Close the dialog box, and close that. Now, also in my PIM operations portal, I can see any charge-out notifications that have been set out. These are where records may be overdue, and I need to notify the user as to why they haven't sent them back yet. I can come in and quickly see a list of all of the items that are currently being requested. I can see a quick list of all of the items that have been charged out. And for each one of these items, you know, notice as I hover over it, I quickly see a summary of the charge-out request, and I can see that this one is long overdue. It was due on the 16th. So let's send a notification. And we'll go ask Dean where his records are, why they haven't been sent back. Right. So send a notice. And that'll generate a notification that goes out to Dean that says, hey, where are my records at? Why haven't you sent those back? Okay, so let's go back over now to our physical records library, and let's refresh the screen. And what you will see for those records that we requested, here's my LDM box. It's been updated with the metadata that has been charged out to me on the date and the time. Same with my folder. It's been charged out to me, shows the date and the time and who it's charged out to. I can also, if I got a large library with a lot of items in it, I can also just come up here and say, hey, show me a list of all of the things that I currently have charged out to me. And I can get a very quick summary, and I can see some of these things like, oh man, that's way overdue. Let me ask for an extension. Okay. I can manage my charge out requests. I can also come in here, if we go back to physical records, I can come in and say, show me a quick summary of all the requests I have outstanding. So I've got, from a user perspective, I've got some management tools as well. Now, at some point in time, when I'm getting ready to move physical items from, let's say, maybe I've created them, I'm getting ready to move them to the warehouse, or they've been sent to the warehouse and they're going to get ready to be placed away, I may want to generate labels for my physical records. And so we provide a label data generation tool that actually allows me to select a set of physical records and then create a label data file that can be used with any commercial labeling software. So let's clear out our cart here. When I first come into this, if I have multiple label definitions set up, I can choose the appropriate label type I want to create for the content types that I'm going to send. Well, when I select this, it automatically does a search and finds all of the matching physical records based on the content type in my definition. Well, this is every conceivable record. I only want to narrow this down to boxes that are available, and I've got 3 boxes. So we're going to select this box, and we're going to select that box. And I also want to get my folders. Whoops. Let's go folder and do a quick search. And this brings back my folders. We'll say add all of those. And you know what? I don't need the test folder. Let's take that one out. So now I've got my list of boxes and folders. Let's generate a label data file. We'll save that, and let's open it up and see what it looks like. Here's my data file, and it contains an entry for each one of the records I had selected, as well as the metadata that we selected to export off of those. That's all defined in that data definition, in that labeled data definition that I selected. So once this is now saved, I can take it, import it into any commercial labeling software, and actually generate labels. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, here's a set of labels that I created just using Microsoft Word and its mail merge capabilities. So I took created a label definition, imported my data file, mapped it to the respective fields in my label, and here you see I've got the content type, the name, the title, when it was created and by whom, its home location, its security classification, and I've taken the box or the folder ID and represented that as a barcode that could be easily scanned. Now let's go back into our library here. And talk about a couple of other things. Now, with physical records, I can't actually have SharePoint manage the disposition of that record. With an electronic record, I can have SharePoint destroy that record for me, no problem. But a physical record, I'm still dependent on a human being somewhere actually destroying the record and then confirming that that's happened. So what happens with, how do I manage that with a physical record? Well, for any of my physical records, I can come in and I can apply an information management policy to manage the retention process around that physical record. So here, for example, you see in our new record that we created, it's being kept for a period of 5 years, and then a workflow will be kicked off that will notify someone it's time to destroy this record. Well, when that notification happens, I can come in here and select the record, go to my ribbon, or I could even have the workflow do this automatically, but I can now toggle this as pending destruction. This is going to update the metadata on the record, show that it's now been flagged for destruction, and set the date. So let's do a quick refresh here, and you will see the metadata has now been updated to show that yes, it's pending disposition, and here's the pending disposition date. Right? We don't want to wait 5 years and come back and finish the demo. Now, once it's actually been destroyed and I have confirmation of that, I can come in and say toggle this now as processed, and again this will update the metadata and show that the record actually has been destroyed on this date, and the metadata will be updated to reflect that. Now we see that the disposition action was taken and the date that that action was taken. So now we have managed the life cycle of a physical record from its creation through being placed in a container, being requested from the central warehouse, we added alternate content, and now we've taken it all the way through to destruction. The last thing we're going to show is how we can actually use these representations of physical records along with electronic records. All of that metadata that we're capturing and when tracking can be used to search for and locate my records. So I'm going to come back to the main level of my site collection, and we're going to use Gimmal Enhanced Search to search for everything related to Dean across my central records repository, my electronic records, my physical record site collection, and I got a number of items returned here. Well, as you can see, the screen real estate isn't used very effectively in the search results, so I'm going to switch my view to the grid view that Gimmal Enhanced Search provides, and I can now quickly and easily see all of my records that were returned. I can take any of these column headings and use them to group my records together. So let's group it by the content type. And so once I do that, I drop that there, and now it groups everything by the appropriate content type. I can quickly collapse my groupings so I can navigate a large number of records, both physical and electronic, very quickly. If I don't want to group them by that column heading anymore, I just simply click on the X and get rid of that. Oops. Let's try that again. And take that out. Okay. If I want to narrow my search down, I can use search scopes, and I can say, you know what, narrow my search down only to my physical records site. And that takes my set of results down from 152 down to 56. Well, that's still more than really what I want. So now let's go into an advanced search, and we have configured the enhanced search to allow me to select from different groups of types of records. I can narrow it down to a specific record type, and now I can choose the metadata values I want to be able to search against, and I'm going to say only find me records where the title of the record contains the term Dean. And now instead of 56 records, I get 3. I get a HR folder, a physical expandable, and a physical record. And if I click here, I'll get the menu where I can view the properties and do other things. Okay. So with that, that ends our demonstration of Gimmal Physical Information Management. Thank you for joining us today, and for any additional information, visit us at gimmal.com.